Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of the Alford Sports Talk Show. I'm Alan, and today we have a fantastic guest for you. We have none other than Carol Sheldon from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. That's right, and she's also a Women's Hall of Famer. So we're going to hear from Carol in just a few moments, but before we get started, let's thank our wonderful sponsor, Chef G's Florida Barbecue Sauce. So delicious and addicting, you may need a support group. Please feel free to visit Chef G's right here in Tampa at 301 South 22nd Street, Tampa, Florida. Can't come down to Tampa? That's okay. Visit Chef G's at flbbqsauce.com. Again, it's flbbqsauce.com. Pick up one of the great 4 delicious flavors and definitely let them know that the Alford Sports Talk Show sent you. Thank you so much, Chef G's. Let's go ahead and get started and bring Carol on. Let's go. All right, welcome everybody to another great episode of the Alford Sports Talk Show. I'm delighted to have a wonderful guest, Carol Sheldon, and we're going to go ahead and talk about baseball. In fact, she has a great passion for women's baseball. So out of all the sports, we'll start right there. Why baseball? What was your passion about baseball?
Well, my dad loved baseball. So growing up, I've always been a Detroit Tiger fan. And as an adult, I've been able to afford partial season tickets and that. It's too hard to go to 81 games. So I have a Friday night package and gives me about 30 games a year. And then I buy another half dozen. But I've always loved baseball, but I'm from that generation that wasn't allowed to play t-ball or baseball.
Yeah.
So I grew up playing softball, but I didn't even get started with that until I was in 7th grade, which in today's standards is pretty late. But I ended up coaching softball, high school softball for about 38 years. Got a chance when I was 43. One of my softball teammates, she and another gal started a Michigan League, and we had 5 teams in Michigan. And then on weekends, we played in the Great Lakes League, which actually at that time was the longest running league since the ladies that played back in the 40s and the 50s. There's a league out east in Pawtucket for girls and women. So they have a way of moving up as they get older. But anyhow, so I got a chance to play baseball at 43 years old and got a base hit my first time up. And then it was all great from there, I guess you could say. Enjoyed a career playing baseball from probably about 1997 to around 2013 or 14. I even went to Hong Kong to play in the Phoenix Cup. So it was great. I really enjoyed it. It gave me another reason to watch the Tigers a little closer with the players out on the field. To pick up some tips, I was mainly a third baseman and a first baseman. And so first base is a little different in slow pitch and different in fast pitch and obviously different in hardball. So, I watched the players a little bit closer to get some tips. And I was fortunate to have Jim Glennie as one of my first coaches, an old school guy who actually started the USA program. So, and Jim was the assistant attorney general for the state of Michigan. So he was pretty well connected on a lot of different levels. But thanks to Jim and his coaching, I picked up the sport very quickly after, I've been watching it all my life. So, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, in fact, you've done so well. You got inducted to National Women's Baseball Hall of Fame. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, well, it was kind of funny. I knew about this. It's an online Women's Baseball Hall of Fame. And I was aware of it. And so I would check it each fall to see if I knew anybody that was going in. In fact, more recently, I've been working on getting some of the players from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League inducted into it. And so I opened it up and I was reading and I'm reading and I saw one of my teammates' names there. And I'm like, okay. And then I read down a little further and I saw my name and I had to reread it to figure out, okay, how come I don't know about this and it's already being published? And I traced everything back. It was my coach from South Bend that put me up for the Hall of Fame. And it was kind of funny because I was kind of like an extra coach out on the field, being older and that. And he said one of the lines in his little letter was, she can look horrible on one pitch and then just turn around on the next pitch and rip the cover off the ball. I couldn't tell you if somebody threw me a curveball versus a fastball. I probably still couldn't do that. But, in fact, what was it, Rob Deere? No, not Rob Deere, the Gravedigger, played for Pittsburgh and Detroit. Anyways, I told him I was playing baseball, and he says, "Do you know how to hit the curveball?" And I looked at him and went, "I don't know, watch it closer." He goes, "No, don't miss this." I mean, don't miss the fastball. Don't try to. So,
Uh,
but anyways, so it's been a fun career. I had an interesting adult life, getting involved with the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. I mean, I saw the movie, went to the bookstore, found a book by Lois Brown called Girls of Summer. I talked about it archives in Fort Wayne, but no address. And I'm a former history teacher. And I thought, well, an archives to me is a museum. So there wasn't any information on where it was. So I called the Baseball Hall of Fame to find out, because Fort Wayne's only about 3.5 hours from me. And he gave me the president of the Players Association's phone number and name. So I called her and asked her about it. And she says, what do you want to see? And I said, well, all of it. And she's like, well, you have to be more specific than that, because it's all in my basement. They had just started procuring artifacts from the players, and they hadn't gotten a museum on board yet to house their stuff. And now it's the History Museum in South Bend is our main repository. And that's actually one of my jobs, is I work with all the museums through Canada and the United States that have things on, maybe even just one player, a couple of players. Sometimes it's university libraries. So it's been a lot of fun. And then out of that, I work with kids during Women's History Month, writing reports. And as long as I can, I get them in touch with a player, hopefully a player that might live in their area, so they actually could meet and get firsthand information for their report. And, unfortunately, we're down to under 30 players alive now. So it's getting harder and harder to get players to a personal appearance, because I do the PR work with Major League, minor league, non-affiliated teams when they run a women in baseball night, that type of thing. And I have one player that lives about 45 minutes away from me. And then there's about 4 other ones on the other side of Michigan. But we had 65 players in Michigan at one time. So I had a lot of people to choose from. And the Midwest, a lot of them stayed in the Midwest, even if they stayed where they played. Betsy Jockum, who actually is going to turn 103 early next month. She was from Cincinnati, and she stayed in South Bend and was a high school teacher in South Bend. So, and that wasn't unusual for a lot of the players from that league.
Yeah, that's a lot of rich history there, and you do a lot of tremendous work. And in the All-American, Baseball Classic, that's where we met in Sarasota. Talk about that experience and the girls that are involved and everyone. Talk about that experience.
It was awesome. The downside was we didn't have very many people there. There's got to be a lot more PR work going on, because the people that came and saw women's baseball for the first time were thrilled with what they saw. I was thrilled, because we are no longer a bunch of softball players turning into baseball players with a few girls that grew up playing baseball. You now have a majority of these players are baseball players. Some of them maybe went to baseball for college, softball for college. Some of them do play baseball in college, but a lot of them have gone softball so they could get a scholarship, and then they come back to women's baseball. But 60 of the best women players in the United States, plus we had a few from Canada and Australia, Puerto Rico. I was so impressed with the left side of the field, which is where the most improvement has happened, I believe, in women's baseball, because like myself, when I would play third base, I was fortunate at the time. I still had a pretty strong arm, but third base and going in the hole at shortstop was very difficult for women when I first started playing, because of that distance. I mean, we played 65 feet for slow pitch. We played 60 foot for fast pitch, and you're playing 90 foot for baseball. That was an extremely difficult throw. It wasn't so bad for the pitchers, I don't believe. The catchers maybe were the next group that had a little more issue because of throwing down to second, but throwing to the corners wasn't usually a problem. But they developed very quickly. And outfielders, they were able to adjust to the throwing that they needed to do. So it was mostly third base and shortstop going in the hole. But that's not what you saw down in Sarasota. You saw great arms from the left side of the field. There were some phenomenal plays, double plays. I mean, it was very smooth looking. I was very pleased with the progress that I had seen. I had gone to the World Cup when it was in Vieira, Florida, a few years earlier. And there definitely is a first tier of teams, countries, and then a second tier of countries, because women's baseball is being played in over 30 countries.
Oh,
We've had
wow.
the top 5 or 6 teams for a long time, but they're also very progressive type of countries. I mean, Japan has been the cream of the crop since the mid 2000s, and Canada, the United States, and Australia are usually battling it out for the other spots. But you're now seeing Taiwan really take a step forward. Venezuela has really put it on. And the team that I am so pleased with and got a chance to, I watched them online, was Mexico. They have quickly developed. I know they've got a few American players down there, of Mexican heritage in that. And the same thing is true for like Puerto Rico and Venezuela. But these countries are really taking it to heart and really improving it. And I was pleasantly surprised with the advancement that Mexico has been able to make in such a short period of time. In fact, they qualified for the World Cup next summer, and they did the qualifying a little bit different this time. Usually we've had 12 teams that qualify. This time what they did is they had a qualification round in the Far East, and they had one in North America. In fact, it was up in Canada where they're going to have the finals. And they broke it down into 6 teams there for each regional, I guess you could say, and then narrowed it down to the top 3. So there'll be 6 teams in the World Cup finals next summer.
Wow. And
Thunder Bay is where they're playing in Canada, directly north of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that the players and the actual content on the field was amazing. The girls there really can play some baseball. I think that's one of the things that I got out of it, was that, hey, they're not just, girls that are just starting off playing baseball. These girls can really play. Talk about the level of talent that you saw.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, quite a few of these girls are playing college ball. They've been playing on their high school baseball teams. Some of them have even had the chance to play in some unaffiliated baseball. So pro ball, but unaffiliated. And that's happening more and more. I know, I can't think of her name right now, a young lady that's from Brown University, who was the first girl to get a scholarship at a Division I school. She just got hired by a non-affiliated team that's in Indiana to play. So this coming summer. But, I've had the opportunity to really get to know some of the U.S. players, and the fact that I played in the Great Lakes League and went to tournaments. I've known quite a few of the girls that have attempted to play for the U.S. team, and some of the girls that were down there in Florida. Not as many anymore, because I'm a little on the older side. And I've been, out of baseball as far as a player from that standpoint for close to 10 years now. I did just get back from the Boston Red Sox women's fantasy camp, though, last week. And I've been doing that. That was my 6th camp with Boston. And I've done 5 camps with the Detroit Tigers. But the Boston camp is all women. And we started with 4 teams, and now we're up to 6 teams. The Yankees also have a all women's camp, and they just finished the other day. So, but it's amazing to get a chance to play baseball with all these women that have such a passion for the game and understand it. And it's pretty cool experience. In fact, my team, we ended up losing 2-0 in the finals. Been bridesmaid 3 times out of the 6 years that I've been there. So hopefully one of these days.
Yeah. There's always next year.
We had an awesome time. I mean, we have major leaguers coaching us. And in fact, the new hitting coach for the San Diego Padres, Victor Rodriguez, I'm so happy for him that he was the assistant hitting coach with Cleveland and with Boston for a long time. He came up through the Orioles system, played with Cal Ripken. Victor's finally got his shot at being the head hitting coach out there. And he's an excellent hitting coach. And Trot Nixon, and I mean, there's just a whole slew of these guys from the Boston Red Sox, and they love being around us. Because we're like sponges. The guys sometimes get a little, oh, I know. Not us. We're like, tell us more. We'll soak it in. And you see a lot of improvements there too, with some of the gals that never played, possibly never played any sports. But the camaraderie in that, it's a baseball sisterhood. So Donna Cohen, who helped get that, or she did get it started for us with the Red Sox, has been a big proponent of women's sports. So
yeah, one person I know that's a big proponent of women's sports is Mark Corbett from Baseball Biz on Deck. He was the EMC at the dinner. So the
Okay.
All-American Classic dinner. How was that event?
I'm trying to think. Was I? Yeah, I was there. I did go. I have so many events and everything. Sometimes you forget. Everything was really well done there. Sue Zapay, who played for the Rockford Peaches the last few years of the league, really wants to see women's pro ball take place again. In fact, the ladies from that league, the All American League, that is one of their goals over the years, is to see advancement in women's baseball and hopefully bring a pro league back. So the AGB is a subsidiary of our AAGPBL, and we're hoping that that's going to happen. We think possibly what we need to do is to stay in a place like what you saw at that tournament and have like maybe a 6 to 8 week league that all plays in the same spot or very close by in either Florida or say Arizona, where the spring training sites are, because you got plenty of fields, and do it in between the seasons where the men are not playing. You got a lot of fans in those two states, a lot of snowbirds and everything that just love baseball. And I think once people discover what these girls are doing, it'll be a lot like the WNBA. I mean, our game is different from the men's, just like basketball is different from the men, where you play mostly below the rim. Women's baseball, we have to do things, just in all sports, we do have to do things a little bit more technically correct, because we have to rely on our brains up here and work hard at what we're doing, because we might not have necessarily the strength like the men do, but we do have women that can hit the ball over 400 feet. So it's not impossible I've watched a couple of the US players. When we were in Vieira, she not only cleared the shorter fence they put up, she cleared the regular fence and put it on the top of the batting cage at USSSA, which used to be the Nationals spring training site. So she hit that a long way, and she hit a couple of them that way. Just amazing. But, they pay more attention to the hit and runs and moving players to get scores in. We have to capitalize on those type of ways of getting runs across the plate, and not be Earl Weaver and hope for the 3-run homer kind of thing. So, but, it's nice when it happens, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you're a huge supporter of the All-American Women's Baseball Classic because you actually did the photography and you have a passion for and umpired one game.
Perry Barber, who was the head umpire for that tournament, I stayed with her and the other umpire, and so she was having a little trouble with making sure she had enough umpires. So I called her and I said, hey, I umpire softball here in Michigan. I said, do you want me to bring my infield stuff down just in case one of you gets hurt or sick or something? And she's like, heck yes. So I worked one game with Perry, and it was different, because softball, you umpire from the outside and come in, and in baseball, you're on the inside already for the most part, except, when nobody's on, you're at first base kind of thing. But I found it to be a fairly easy transition. Of course, I really didn't have to worry about watching for a balk, which, would take me a little bit of practice to do that. I was more worried about the running, and I probably do more running doing softball, having to go from first to third, following a player. Whereas with baseball, starting inside, I don't have as far a distance to run necessarily. So, but it was fun to do that. And I actually was one of the photographers down in Vieira, Florida for the World Cup a few years ago. I was shooting for the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. And so, Sue was gracious enough to let me be one of the photographers. So it was fun. I enjoy it. I always have enjoyed it at my Tiger games and that. Unfortunately, Major League Baseball is changing their tunes about letting you bring a nice camera into their facilities. So I'm not going to be able to get the shots that I used to. But as you could see, some of the pictures that I sent you, I got a pretty good eye for what's going to happen out on the field. When you know the sport, it's a lot easier to shoot it. So
yeah, and that's unfortunate. Expand a little bit on that so the listening audience understands about the camera, the restrictions you have now in Major League Baseball.
If I'm going to a major league park or a minor league park, I have to go into their rules to find out exactly what they have, because it's not a standard rule per park. Pretty much I can bring almost anything I want into a minor league park, but with major leagues, unfortunately my Tigers are the second or third toughest. There are a few parks where I could still bring in my camera with a halfway decent lens, But the Tigers and a couple of the other teams, if you have an interchangeable lens, that means you can take the lens off the camera and put a different lens on. They don't allow it because they consider you to be a pro. And it's like, well, anybody can buy an interchangeable lens camera. Doesn't make them a pro. And now that the screens are up, from my seat anyways, unless I'm sitting in the first couple of rows, I can make the screen disappear and down close to the field. But from my seat, 30 rows back, that screen's always going to be there. So it's not like I'm going to be able to sell them. I've never been able to get a straight answer out of anybody either of why I can't bring the camera in that I've been bringing in for 30 years. And then some of the major league teams have a restriction on the size of the lens. Some of it is physical size. Some of it is actually like millimeters. So, like a 300 millimeter might be too much for some parks. The Tigers they don't want you bringing something in that's over 75 millimeters. And it's like, that does nothing. I take portrait shots. So and it's sad because I really that's part of my enjoyment at the game. I'll keep score and I follow where the batters hit. So it helps me, figure out where they're going to hit it. Then I set up for a picture. If somebody's on first, I set up for a picture of them stealing if it's a guy that's got legs. If it's Miguel Cabrera, not necessarily am I going to be worried about him stealing second base. But, I've followed the game and I understand the game. I shot college football for a while my nephews were playing. So I had to learn that game because I never played football. But after being with them for about 8 years, I really got into the flow of that game too. So, and I've shot some amateur golf outings and things like that too. And I'm a golfer. So again, you kind of know where you need to be and when to shoot so that you're not disturbing a golfer during their swing, that kind of thing. But it's a lot of fun. I've made a lot of friends down at the Tiger games that are photographers. They've even helped me pick out, my next camera kind of thing. So it's been kind of cool to get to know some of the photographers that way. And there's a lot of women photographers out there too. We have quite a few in Detroit. And but it just adds another dimension to the game, to have a little bit of fun. And so I enjoy it.
So will that new camera meet the guidelines that are in place now, or it still might be flagged?
No, I bought a smaller camera, a Canon M50, which is actually an interchangeable lens camera, but a lot of times the people at the gates don't know because it looks like a point and shoot kind of thing. And so I've been able to get that camera in, except for one time because the person working the gate knew. And I tried to explain to her, I said, this is definitely, it's not a pro camera. It does not have the quality of the other cameras that the other cameras that I have. But nope, it's an interchangeable lens. You can't bring it in. So I went to a different gate and got in the game. But, I can't bring a bag in. So, I can bring an empty bag in if I roll it up and stick it in my pocket. So in case there's rain or something like that, I have a little raincoat for my camera. But if the weather is really bad, a lot of times I'll leave it home just because I don't want it to get wet. But it's taken a little bit of the fun out of it. But things change, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully things will change for the better.
Yeah, well, a lot of times if I knew there was a rookie in the game for our team, he's taking his first major league at bat, I'm shooting him, and then I give him the pictures. I got Tomy's number 599 and 600, or was it 499? It's 500. How many home runs he had? I think it's 599 and 600. He hit them both in Comerica Park. And so I kept taking pictures. His family came out. I took more pictures. I put a thumb drive together, took it down to the ballpark the next day, had 2 copies of his home run, one for him to sign for me and one to give to him, along with the thumb drive with all these other pictures on it. And so, it's kind of nice to give me an autograph. I'm going to give you something back. And it's my way to sometimes to get to know the rookies a little bit at the games. But that's changing too, because the guys don't autograph like they used to. And so I don't do very much of that at all. Usually it was my photographs. And a lot of times they would come over to me because they knew it wasn't a standard photograph that I bought somewhere. They knew it was different. And if they liked it, I said, I'll be back in a couple of games. I'll bring a photograph for you that you can have. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So nowadays you find that guys just don't sign as much?
No, because they have contracts, with these big companies for autographs and stuff like that. I don't know the names of all of them, but, for these big card shows and stuff like that. And if they do autograph, a lot of times, if it's a ball, they won't autograph on the sweet spot because that's what their contract says with this autograph company kind of thing. So I don't do as much of that anymore, but that's okay. I got an awful lot of good ones during the 80s and the 90s. A lot of future Hall of Famers. And I've had a membership to the Baseball Hall of Fame for a long time. I've been fortunate enough to get to know a few people that work there. Tim Wilds, who was one of the librarians at the hall, actually is a member of our All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So it was kind of nice to be able to go there and see Tim. And then one of the presidents of the Baseball Hall of Fame was from my area. And so I got a chance to meet him a couple of times. And what's really cool, though, is to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame with the ladies from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. I mean, it's like a dream come true to be there with them, looking at their stuff and seeing them interact with kids and other adults. I mean, it's just, they're like a magnet for people to go and talk to them and that, because they're living history, and unfortunately we're losing them like our World War II veterans. And many of them were veterans, both in Canada and the United States, and or Rosie the Riveters. So, they definitely did their part during World War II, not only keeping baseball going, but also keeping the factories going. They're a very interesting group of women because they broke tons of barriers. They became doctors, pilots, you name the profession, they became it. CEOs of big companies, heads of departments at universities. So they broke a lot of barriers down. And so it's been a real joy to get to know these gals.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, people who want to, know more about the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, how do they get involved and how do they follow you?
Well, we have a website, and it's the letters All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So it's AAGPBL.org. If you just look up, Google women's baseball, women's pro baseball, that name will pop up and our website will pop up. On there, they can actually join not only the AAGPBL, but the AGB. You can click on them and it'll take you to their website. I work on the website. I work on the Facebook page. I don't do the old Twitter or that stuff. I leave that for the younger ones. But I am the person that when a question gets asked through our website, those questions get sent to me. And if I know the person, I usually write my name down so they see that it's me answering their question, or I'll give them my personal email address so that they can email me so that I can help a lot of times one of their daughters be able to get in touch with one of the players or something like that to ask some questions during History Month. And I also do most of the questions for the Facebook page. There's a group of us that work on both the Facebook and the website, but the website questions usually filter back to me. So, we have found a lot of family members that way. We've actually found a few players because we didn't know they existed, and their family member writes to us. Do you know anything about so-and-so? She's supposedly played, in this league. Sometimes they didn't. There was another league that ran basically at the same time in Chicago. It was called the National Girls Baseball League. And they had about 6 teams, I believe, and they played in Chicago and around Chicago. But the difference between the two leagues was we both started out using a softball and incorporating baseball rules, where they lengthened the bases a little bit. They let them lead off. I haven't quite figured out how they picked anybody off first, if they were throwing underhand. But anyhow, the Chicago League stayed with underhand pitching their entire existence. So as the All-Americans kept changing and their ball went through 6 different sizes, and they went from pitching underhand to sidearm to overhand, we started losing some of the players when they started going to pure baseball, because the pitchers couldn't always make that transition from throwing underhand to throwing overhand. So the All-Americans actually used a lot of outfielders to teach them how to pitch. And most of those players, they played another position because you only had about 15 or 16 on a team, unlike Major League Baseball, which is 26 players. So you had to double up. If you weren't pitching, you were playing somewhere else. Jean Fott, who passed away this past year, she played for South Bend. She only played baseball. I think her dad was involved with the baseball. She was originally from Pennsylvania. She is the only professional pitcher to throw 2 perfect games. Plus, wow. She threw 2 or 3 other no-hitters. And she had such a great arm, she played third base on her days off and a few times in the outfield. And she was quite the hitter, too, on top of it. She ended up marrying the manager, She took part of a year off because she had a child, and then came back and played. I mean, she pitched one of her no hitter or one of her perfect games the last year she played, and she played up through 53. And for other reasons, she ended up not playing in 1954. She certainly could have, but she decided not to play. And I think she kind of regretted that a little bit. But yeah, she played from, I think, about 1946 or 7 through 53 and racked up a ton of stats in that shorter period of time. There was only one player that played all 12 years. That was Dottie Schroeder, who was a shortstop, and she played for South Bend, Fort Wayne. She's mostly known for Fort Wayne. She ended her career with Kalamazoo. So she won a couple of titles while she was playing, and she was like 14 when she first started playing. You know, she'd start after school got out, and she had a twin brother, but she was the only one that played all 12 years. There was one other lady, though. She would have played all 12 years, but she was like 29 years old when the league started in 43. In fact, what's interesting about her was she is the link between the All-Americans and the Bloomer Girls.
Yeah.
She's the only player to play as a Bloomer Girl and then play in the All-Americans. So she was 29 in 1943, and she told them her real age. And so they cut her because of her age. So she was really a good player. So the next one backed out, lied about her age. I mean, she literally told this to me. So lied about her age, went to a different tryout where they didn't know her. She didn't change her name or anything. She just changed her age.